So that's Fred's old car?
Yep.
Al?
Yes, it is.
That's it? Do you get?
I inherited it from Fred, and it's his new old car.
All right. So we're going to head out. Where are we going?
We're going out onto the runway and look at the 624 repaving project and the new centerline lights.
So look at all those radios. Pretty nice, huh?
Yeah.
Always tuned in?
Yeah. Usually we monitor. This radio monitors the town frequencies, the police, fire department, and also marine. And this one is strictly an aviation radio.
Gotcha. So how did you decide? I mean, how long does a runway last?
20 years. This is a 20-year project. It's done every 20 years whether you want to or not, but this one really needed it because we had some elevation and we have cracks and some settling over the period of time, and to renew it, it was required. And we used our capital improvement funds from the FAA, and of course the project is 97.5% funded by the federal government and the state. So the airport pays basically 2.5% of the total cost.
How disruptive has it been?
It's obviously 6 and 24 is our main runway, and it is our primary and only runway where we have an instrument landing system, which allows us to use what is known as a precision approach to land, which gives us both vertical and horizontal guidance into the runway.
So it's been not easy though. I mean,
we've had to use our secondary runway, which and typically you use the runway that is favored by the wind, because most planes like to, ideally you'll like to take off and land into the wind. This is Rich Van Gelder, who's our field engineer from Edwards and Kelsey. You want to come with us?
Sure. Hi, Rich. What's Edwards and Kelsey?
They're our consulting engineers. We have a retainer, an engineering firm on retainer, and we sign a contract with them, and they provide all our engineering services.
But they're not the guy. They take care of making sure the job gets done right.
They do the design work. Just push that over. Edwards and Kelsey does the design work. They put together the required information for the bid. They help us select the winning contractor, and then they provide the supervision so that the contractor complies with the specifications of the contract.
How's the project going so far?
So far, we're on schedule, slightly ahead.
Good. So is this something that you do primarily as a you do airports and that's it, or what other stuff do you do?
Our company does bridges and highways and everything, but I work for the airport division, and that's all we do is airports, specifically in New England with this group.
You able to keep busy constantly?
Yes, I've been the last 5 years up in Manchester, New Hampshire, doing that expansion project up there. And this is the next project.
Wow. And with air travel becoming more and more popular, and more airports, local airports going in too, isn't that true? A lot of small towns putting in municipals and
expanding them. Because they're getting more people that are flying. Sure.
Rich, you can explain, basically, these are the minor holes that they're repairing and the cracks in the runway. This is the rough milling of the runway that you see here, and this is they'll come in and do another milling to get it more fine?
No, we'll actually pave right over top of this with a shim coat. But we've identified these cracks as something that needs to be blown out and cleaned, and then they're sealed in the next process, so that crack doesn't reflect itself up through the new pavement that gets put down.
How does this compare to paving a highway?
Same thing, just wider. It's 150 feet wide instead of 25 feet wide.
It is the same thing,
Pretty
though.
much.
Yeah.
Airports are typically a much thicker pavement than highways, but it depends on the size of airplane that you have.
Of course.
Whatever we're doing here isn't going to change the specifications of the runway. It'll be the same as it was before. We're not going to make it so we can get bigger planes in or anything. It'll be the same specification, and it will handle the same type of aircraft that the other runway, the runway that is here, has been in the past.
And the technology of the materials, how has that changed?
It hasn't changed much in 50 years, other than the techniques of putting it down. We now have vibratory compactors that can pack it denser, so that it should last longer.
And the type of patching that you're putting in, the large patches, the way you were reinforcing it and everything?
These patches, the simple process they're doing now just gets an asphaltic tar put in it. The larger patches that are milled out wide will have a piece of membrane put down that acts like a strengthening layer on that crack. And the whole purpose of that is so that those cracks don't reflect up through the new surface we're going to put down. You only get to do these runways every 20 years by FAA spec, so you try and build them to last at least 20 years.
You see here is a trench that was dug where there was a significant crack, and they go down, what, about 4 to 6 inches?
3 inches.
3 inches. And they mill that out, and then that will be filled in, and Rich can explain the process.
They identify the cracks. One crew comes through with a compressed air jet heated torch and heats up the crack. And the second crew comes through with an asphalt material liquid and fills that crack back in and seals it up.
The way the wire was put in before, it was basically in a groove and then epoxied on top of it. And we had a lot of trouble when you had a crack and the water got in there and the crack moved, the wire would break. And then we had a lot of...
Don't step in it.
We had to replace and repair a lot of these cracks over the years, and it was not the best system, but it was the one that was funded at the time that it went in. And now with the new conduits, we expect to eliminate those problems.
So that's actual electrical wire for the lighting?
Yeah, this is the existing wire that the lights used to be lit by, and it was just embedded in an epoxy trench across the runway, right at the surface of the pavement. Wow.
Now what we've got is about about an inch and a half or 3?
2 inch, now we're putting in 2 inch in these trenches out here in the middle where these cans are. We've now put 2 inch PVC embedded in concrete, 18 inches below the pavement. And then a can that's 18 inches deep as well, where before it used to be a little short 6 inch can with this surface wire fed into. It was very susceptible to being hit by plows or cracks in the pavement, taking it out of service.
The runways are numbered after the heading to the closest 10 degrees of the actual compass heading of the runway. So 6 would be 60 degrees, 2-4 would be 240 degrees, 1-5 is 150 degrees, and 3-3 is 330 degrees. So when we refer to a runway as 6-2-4, those are the reciprocal headings for those runways. And we now have a precision approach on 2-4, which is our predominant wind out of the southwest. But in the wintertime, and whenever we have a northeastern breeze, we like to use 6. And this is our longest runway. It's 6,300 feet, whereas 15 and 3-3 is 4,000 feet. So we can land most small planes on either runway, and actually we have another runway that we use as a taxiway right now is 12, 1-2, and 3-0. That's that trench where we got the bigger crack.
Yes.
So basically, by putting in this ILS on 6, we'll have much more flexibility, and planes prefer to land into the wind in all cases for safety, particularly out here where we have a predominant much more wind than you would have inland. So that part of it is a safety issue. And even though for noise we like to take the overwater routes, in most cases I recommend it, and the tower works very closely with us on that, when there's a very high wind of over 10 knots, most planes would prefer to land into the wind. They can land slower, it's more stable, and traditionally it's a better way for an airplane to perform. And that's both taking off and landing. The objective of putting in a runway 6 ILS, which the FAA feels is a safety issue, will require us to do some grading down at this end. So we're working with Land Council and the Natural Heritage Foundation to make sure that we don't have any rare species of plants that will be disturbed during this grading process. And we have a meeting next week with MEPA, which will be to review our environmental impact report, but one of those issues that will come up will be the grading for the ILS, which we'd like to get in as soon as possible on a safety basis.